Yeah, hello. My name is Ralf Zimmerman. I'm from Rostock University and Helmholtz Center Munich. And we are working on aerosols, aerosol emissions, health effects of aerosols. And we have a particular interest in shipping emissions and also to understand how new measures, new fuels, new abatement approaches are actually helping to avoid any adverse health effects. And in this respect, I'm very interested in these conferences and activities.
So, when it comes to health related issues, what is the best approach? Is it distillate fuels? Is it sulfur scrubbers? Or is it, in fact, new fuels?
Yeah, this is not so easy to answer. One point is that the distillate fuels, of course, they are cleaner with respect to metals and many of the other toxicants which are in there. The scrubbers and the heavy fuel oils have a big problem because the metals and these toxicants are not actually retained by the scrubber. The scrubber alone is possibly not a very good solution to this. And the new fuels, of course, this is something to be explored. I'm quite optimistic about LNG. Ammonia, of course, is very interesting, but still many things are unclear here, and we need just to do a little bit of research before we are going to bring a new fuel in mass operation.
It's interesting that you're optimistic about LNG because there is an increasing body of opinion that says LNG is perhaps more harmful than it was originally presented, and that we need to leapfrog it and go to some of the new fuels. So, what is the basis for your positivity?
Okay, so I have to say that I'm looking mainly on the health effect side. So, of course, LNG has a big problem probably with methane slip if we consider the climate issue. But the particle emission from gaseous fuel is much reduced if compared to liquid fuels. So I assume that from the health effect perspective, LNG is a good option. If this is true for climate, is a different point.
Is it your experience that people are switching on more to the health considerations when it comes to these different options?
Well, this is something, of course, which takes long time. But when we are looking to the, let's say, to that, what, for example, is done in the European Union, so we can see more awareness on the pollution from ships. And it's expected that also in the harbors, new measures will come up locally. But also, you just have to look into the European Union funding program. What is interested is to better understand this impact from ship emissions, and they are huge. And therefore, I think it will come in the future, I think quite soon, that different countries will put this health effect issue more on their agenda. And the question, of course, is, especially as we are in a business where long-term investment plays a role, it would be quite important to consider it early, not late.
In your paper, naturally, you made a lot of reference to scrubbers and the link between scrubbers and the health effects. What feedback have you had from industry, that is to say, the maritime industry, which has spent millions, even billions of dollars on such technology?
Yes, so the problem we have here that this IMO legislation, the sulfur cap, is more or less targeting a proxy, not the real thing which is harmful. So the sulfur content itself is not the point which is generating any hazard. So sulfur dioxide is going to end up at some in some atmospheric transformation steps as sulfates. This is pretty harmless. And now we see that abatement techniques are actually introduced, which are reducing the sulfur very efficiently. That's the point which is legally asked for, but not the intentionally, let's say, effect hoped for, namely that this heavy fuel oils are not used anymore, is achieved. So we are just steering the industry by not so well, let's say, chosen legislation in a wrong direction. So unfortunately, now we learn that the inhalable particles are practically not reduced. There are possibilities which would be filters after the scrubber, and there are also industries which are working with this and trying to get this implemented. There are other industries which are working on dry, let's say, dry processes for desulfurication, and then using also filter measures for the particles. And I think this is the way to go.
Thank you. There are people who suggest that if you emulsify HSFO prior to injection, particulate matter is dramatically reduced. Is this something that you've looked into?
No, we haven't done this. The question we have to really investigate in such case if this really is targeting the ultrafine and fine particulates. So total PM mass is not so interesting because the PM10 and especially the PM2.5, so the smaller particles are health relevant. The bigger particles, which are carrying most of the mass, actually are not contributing to the health effects. And in this respect, it could also be that this measure is reducing, let's say, the larger particle fraction, which then is not giving the health effect, but this has to be investigated.
And finally, Ralf, you've attended many of our MAP events. How did you find this particular MAP event in Houston?
Yes, it was, again, a very nice experience because many partners from the maritime industry are involved, and we are discussing, and we have got quite good feedback and interest in our research. And actually, the project I presented, the scrubber project, came from a previous event where we met the partners from industry, which then ended up in a project funded by the German government. And I think it's an ideal forum also for academic and industry partnership to tackle these problems. The point is, what is in the end also the biggest saving for the industry is if we are able to make sustainable processes so that we know that actually what is critically is really removed from the exhausts. And then the investment is also, let's say, long-term safe for the future.